Hello, friends. Today I am your storyteller. I hope you will enjoy this story. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so that we can receive your love and support. Now let's begin the story. I wasn't supposed to be on the road that long. That's what kept running through my head as the yellow lines blurred under my headlights, one after another, like an endless loop I couldn't escape. The trip had started out innocent enough. I'd spent the weekend in Lexington, Kentucky, catching up with my younger brother Matt. He'd just had his first kid, and I hadn't even met my niece yet. I was late, 3 months late, if I was honest. But life back in Tulsa, Oklahoma had me drowning in deadlines and responsibilities. So when I finally carved out a weekend, I promised him I'd be there. And I was. It was a good trip, better than I expected. Holding that tiny baby, seeing Matt all grown up and serious about fatherhood, it hit me harder than I thought. We stayed up late, reminisced about dumb high school fights, old girlfriends, the usual. He told me I should stay one more night, rest up before the drive, but I didn't listen. I had work Monday morning, and the thought of sitting in my cubicle with coffee in hand pretending I wasn't exhausted seemed manageable. I figured if I left Sunday afternoon, I'd be home before midnight. Easy, except it wasn't. Somewhere past Springfield, Missouri, time got away from me. The daylight was gone, the road was empty, and the adrenaline that had carried me the first few hours finally drained out of my system. My eyes started to burn, heavy like someone had slipped sand in them when I wasn't paying attention. I rolled down the window. Cold air blasted my face, but it didn't help. My head kept nodding. I slapped my cheek once, twice. Still nothing. "Come on, Eric," I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. "You're not wrecking on some empty highway." That's when I saw it. Off to the right, a faded green sign with reflective letters. Hollow Pines, gas, food, lodging, exit 19. The arrow pointed down a narrow exit ramp. I hesitated for half a second, then took it. Better a crappy motel bed than a hospital bed. Or worse, the place looked like it hadn't had a population over 50 in 20 years. A single stoplight blinked red over a cracked main street. On one side, there was an abandoned diner with broken windows. On the other, a convenience store with its lights off. But farther down, I saw it, the glow of a neon sign buzzing faintly in the dark. Hollow Pines Motel. The sign flickered between letters, HLOPS. I sighed, pulling into the gravel lot. There were maybe 5 cars scattered around. Most of the windows in the rooms were dark, curtains drawn. The motel itself was a long row of single-story rooms, paint peeling, the doors all a dull blue. I killed the engine and sat for a second, listening. The night was too quiet. No crickets, no distant cars. Just the buzz of the neon and the tick of my cooling engine. "Better than nothing," I muttered, grabbing my backpack from the passenger seat. The lobby was small, lit by a single fluorescent tube that flickered every few seconds. The smell hit me immediately, a mix of cigarettes and old carpet. Behind the counter sat a man, maybe in his late 50s. He was wiry, with gray stubble and a trucker cap pulled low. His eyes were half-lidded, like I'd woken him up. "Evening," he rasped. "Hey, just need a room for the night." "You got it." "Name?" "Eric Dawson." He typed slowly on an ancient computer, that word with each key press. Then he slid a form toward me. $60. Cash or card. I handed it over, and he swiped it on a machine that looked older than me. "You driving through?" he asked casually. "Yeah, headed back to Tulsa, just too tired to keep going." He nodded, almost like he'd heard that same line 100 times before. Maybe he had. "Room 7. Ice machine don't work. Wi-Fi's down more than it's up. You want extra towels? Better grab 'em now. Nobody here after midnight?" He pushed the key card toward me. His hand lingered just a second too long. His eyes, sharp now, flicked up to mine. "You lock your door, you hear?" "Yeah, of course." He didn't smile. Room 7 was halfway down the row. I slid the key in, the green light blinked, and the lock clicked. The smell hit first, stale air freshener fighting against mildew. The carpet was threadbare, the comforter a floral pattern gone brown with age. The TV looked like something from the 90s, and the bathroom fan rattled like it might fall out of the ceiling. But I didn't care. I dropped my bag on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed on the bed. My phone buzzed once. Low battery warning, no charger handy. Figures, I muttered, setting it on the nightstand. I was out within minutes. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. My eyes fluttered open. The room was dark, the only light the faint glow from the neon outside slipping through the curtains. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. My chest tightened. It was coming from the window. I sat up slowly, every nerve buzzing. The curtains were thick, heavy, hiding whatever was outside. I whispered, barely audible, "Hello?" Silence. Then tap, tap, tap. Louder this time. I swallowed hard. My mind raced. Maybe just a branch? Except I hadn't seen any trees close enough when I parked. I stood, bare feet pressing into the cold carpet, and edged toward the curtain. My fingers brushed the fabric, hesitated. "Don't!" my brain screamed. "Don't look!" But I pulled it anyway, just an inch. What I saw froze me. A man's shoulder, the back of a jacket. Standing so close to the glass, I couldn't see his face, just the curve of his arm, the faint outline of his head. He wasn't moving, just standing. I let the curtain fall, heart hammering. "What the hell do you want?" I called, my voice shaking. No answer. The tapping stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing. Silence thick enough to choke on. I forced myself back into bed, pulling the blanket up to my chin. Every creak, every distant sound outside made my body tense. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under again. Thump, thump, thump. I bolted upright, adrenaline surging. Someone was pounding on the door. I stumbled toward it, feet heavy, and pressed my eye to the peephole. Black, not night, not empty. Black, like something was pressed against it. "Jesus," I whispered. The pounding stopped. I backed away slowly, chest heaving. The silence returned. Minutes stretched. Nothing. I crawled back into bed, staring at the door until the blur of morning light finally broke through the curtains. I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed it all, until I saw the door. Right by the latch, the paint was chipped and splintered. Fresh marks, deep gouges, like someone had tried to pry it open. My stomach dropped. I shoved everything into my bag, yanked the door open, and froze. My car. The driver's side door had matching marks. Scratches in the metal, the frame bent slightly. Someone had tried to break in. "Why stop?" I muttered. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the empty lot. I turned toward the office. The man from the desk was standing outside, cigarette between his fingers, watching me. When our eyes met, he raised a hand in a slow wave. I didn't wave back. I slammed the car door, started the engine, and peeled out of the lot. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I replayed it all in my head. The tapping, the black peephole, the man outside my window, the gouges on the door. Why hadn't he finished? Why just stand there? Was he waiting for me to open it? I'll never know, but I know this. I've never stayed in a roadside motel again. I'd rather sleep in my car at a rest stop, engine off, doors locked, than ever risk another night like that. Because sometimes on long drives, when the road is empty and every small town looks the same, I feel it again, that someone is standing just outside the door, waiting. Story 2. I never used to think twice about the little roadside motels scattered across America's highways. You know the kind. Cheap neon signs buzzing half-broken, curtains drawn tight against rooms that probably hadn't been renovated since the early 90s. They always looked the same. 2 floors, exterior doors, a cracked parking lot where semis and tired sedans lined up under flickering lamps. To me, they were pit stops, nothing more. A bed for 6 hours, maybe a stale muffin in the morning, and then back on the road. I never once wondered what stories those walls had soaked up. I never cared who slept there before me or what might have happened behind those bolted doors, until one night in Southern Ohio. That night changed the way I'll ever look at motels. I was 32 at the time, working as a regional sales rep for an industrial equipment company out of Indianapolis. The kind of job that meant endless miles on the road, bad coffee at gas stations, and living out of a suitcase more weeks than not. That particular week, I'd been sent to Charleston, West Virginia for a client demo. 3 long days of smiling, nodding, talking numbers. By the time I wrapped up, I was running on fumes. But I was stubborn. I figured I'd drive halfway back home that night to shave time off the next day. It was late October. The leaves had already dropped, and the air had that damp bite that seeps through your jacket. The highways were mostly empty. Just me, the hum of tires on pavement, and the occasional semi glowing in my rearview mirror. I told myself I'd stop when my eyes started burning. That's usually the sign for me. Sure enough, around midnight, I hit that wall. My vision blurred, the lane markers doubling. I gripped the wheel tighter, cursed under my breath, and started scanning for the next exit. That's when I saw it. A weathered sign just off the interstate, lit by a crooked spotlight. Redwood Motel. Vacancy. The D in Redwood flickered so it looked like Rewoo. It wasn't one of the big chains, just a squat 2-story strip of rooms with peeling red paint and a gravel lot. But I was too tired to care. I pulled in and parked under a buzzing floodlight. The place was quiet except for the steady chirp of crickets. A single pickup sat crooked in one of the spaces, headlights still warm. Inside, the lobby smelled of burnt coffee and something chemical, like old floor cleaner. Behind the counter sat a middle-aged man in a faded polo, balding, heavy-set, with a face that looked like it hadn't seen sleep in days. His name tag read Carl. "Evening," he said, voice flat, like he'd said it 1,000 times before. "Yeah, need a room," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. "Single or double?" "Single, just me." He tapped at a keyboard, the screen glow reflecting off his glasses. "Room 27, 2nd floor, far end. Non-smoking. Heat works fine. Ice machine's busted." "All right." I slid my card across the counter. He ran it, handed me a plastic key card, and added, "Checkouts at 11. Coffee in the morning." "Appreciate it," I said. Carl gave me a tired half smile, then looked back down at the screen. I grabbed my duffel, pushed through the glass door, and climbed the outside staircase. Room 27 was at the far corner. The lock beeped weakly when I swiped the card. Inside, the smell hit me immediately. Musty curtains, stale smoke, maybe mildew hiding in the carpet. But the bed looked fine. The heater hummed, and the bathroom had towels. That was enough for me. I dumped my bag on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the mattress. My bones ached from the drive. For a while, I just lay there, scrolling through emails on my phone, letting the drone of the heater lull me. Around 1 a.m., my eyelids started to sink. That's when the phone rang. It wasn't my cell. It was the beige landline on the nightstand. I frowned. Who the hell calls a motel room at 1 in the morning? I picked it up. "Hello?" A man's voice answered. Deep, flat, almost like Carl's, but off. "Sir," the voice said, "we need you to come down to the front desk." Immediately, my stomach tightened. What for?" The voice didn't answer, just repeated, sharper. "Come to the front desk." Now then it clicked off. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, heart thudding. Maybe Carl forgot to get my signature on something, but why wouldn't he just explain? I sighed, pulled on my sneakers, and stepped out. The night air was sharp and damp. The parking lot was empty, the only sound the buzz of the floodlights. I jogged down the stairs and pushed into the lobby. Empty. The desk sat abandoned, computer screen casting a faint glow. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I stepped closer. No Carl. No one. Just the faint hum of a vending machine. After a minute, I muttered, "Screw this," and headed back upstairs. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. I snatched it up. "What the hell do you want?" The same voice, louder this time. "You didn't come down. I told you to come to the desk." "I did," I snapped. "Nobody was there." "You didn't," the voice hissed. "Come down." Now my skin crawled. I slammed the receiver down and yanked the cord out of the wall. "Try calling me now," I muttered, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow in the empty room. I crawled back into bed, heart racing. Sleep didn't come easy. Sometime later, maybe 20 minutes, I was drifting off when a sound jolted me upright. Knocking. Soft at first, then harder. 3 sharp raps against the door. I froze, pulse hammering. Another knock. Quick. Urgent. I forced myself to the door. "Who is it?" I called. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, retreating down the walkway outside. I yanked the door open. The corridor was empty, dimly lit by one buzzing bulb. At the far corner, I thought I saw movement, like someone turning the corner. "Hey!" I shouted. No reply. I stood there, fists clenched, until finally I slammed the door and slid the deadbolt. That night, I barely slept a wink. By morning, the motel looked normal again. Sunlight cut through the curtains, cars lined the lot, and the muffled chatter of families filtered through the walls. I dragged myself downstairs, dark circles under my eyes. Carl was back at the desk, sipping coffee, looking as tired as ever. "Rough night?" he asked, noticing me. "You tell me," I muttered. "Who was working overnight?" He blinked. "Just me." "Why?" I frowned. "You? No one else?" "Nope, just me." I told him everything. The calls, the voice, the knocking. His face went pale. "That ain't me," he said firmly. "And it damn sure wasn't anyone else. I was right here all night." "Then who?" I started. He cut me off, shaking his head. "Don't. Just don't." I left soon after. But curiosity gnawed at me. At a gas station down the road, I struck up conversation with the cashier, an older guy named Ray. When I mentioned staying at the Redwood Motel, his eyes narrowed. "You didn't hear about that place?" he asked quietly. "Hear what?" He leaned closer, voice low. "Back in the late 90s, it wasn't just a motel. Cops busted a whole trafficking ring running out of there. Young girls. Some never made it out. Word is one of them got murdered in room 27. "My room?" Ray nodded grimly. "They covered it up for months. Blood under the mattress seams. Eventually the owner skipped town. New folks bought it, slapped a fresh coat of paint, but the history's still there." I swallowed hard. "So the calls?" He nodded again. "People say the phone rings at night. Always a man's voice, telling you to come down. But there's never anyone there. Some say it's the trafficker himself. Others say it's the girl's killer. Either way, you're lucky all you got was knocks." I drove away from Southern Ohio with my chest tight, every mile putting distance between me and the Redwood. But even now, years later, I can still hear that voice in my head when I see a flickering neon motel sign. "Come down to the front desk. Now." And that's why I'll sleep in my car before I ever stay in a roadside motel again. Story 3. I never thought much about motels until last July. They were just those in-between places you noticed from the highway. Neon vacancy signs buzzing in the dark, parking lots lined with pickup trucks and dusty sedans, lobby doors that chimed whenever someone came through. To me, they were background noise of road trips, somewhere you stayed because you were too tired to keep driving. Nothing more. But that changed last summer. It had been a brutal year. My girlfriend Rachel was a full-time ER nurse in Tulsa. 12-hour shifts that turned into 14, nights where she came home pale and barely able to speak, sometimes crying in the shower because of the things she had to see. I worked at contracting for a bank in Oklahoma City. Boring, endless troubleshooting, always on call, my phone buzzing at midnight because some server went down. Between the two of us, life felt like an endless grind of work, sleep, repeat. We hadn't had a proper break in almost 2 years, so when I suggested we take a cheap weekend trip, nothing fancy, just a short getaway to reset, Rachel actually smiled. We didn't need Florida or Vegas. We just needed out. Somewhere quiet. I booked us a motel in a little town called Riverbend, Arkansas, about 40 minutes from the Mississippi River. It wasn't much of a destination, just a faded dot on the map with a couple of diners, a bait shop, and a view of the river. But it was cheap, close enough to drive, and far enough away that work couldn't reach us. The Riverbend Motel looked harmless online. White stucco, 2 stories, pool out front, though the photos made it look more green than blue, and free breakfast advertised on a faded banner. $75 a night. It wasn't a resort, but it would do. We left Tulsa on a Friday morning, coffee thermoses in hand, windows cracked against the sticky summer air. Rachel leaned her head against the seat, sunglasses covering her tired eyes. Feels weird not going to work, she said softly. That's the point, I told her. No pagers, no phones, no alarms. Just us. When we pulled into Riverbend 6 hours later, the motel stood just off Highway 49, wedged between a gas station and a shuttered BBQ joint. Its neon sign flickered in the daylight. Half the vacancy letters burned out. Inside, the lobby smelled of lemon cleaner and faint cigarette smoke. A woman at the desk, maybe late 40s, bleached blonde hair and a messy bun, checked us in. She gave us a folded paper map of town, even circled a catfish place by the river. "Y'all just here for the weekend?" she asked, tapping her nails on the counter. "Yeah," I said. "Just passing through." "Well, enjoy it while you can." "Not much to see here." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Our room was upstairs, overlooking the cracked pool. The curtains were thin, the carpet smelled faintly of mildew, and the AC rattled like it was dying. But the sheets looked clean, and Rachel just flopped onto the bed with a relieved sigh. "It smells like bleach," she said, wrinkling her nose. Then she grinned. "Better than mold, huh? I'll take it." We spent the first day doing nothing. Walked by the river, ate fried catfish at the diner, bought ice cream cones from a little shop that only took cash. For once, we weren't rushing anywhere. That night we fell asleep with the TV on, half watching some rerun sitcom. For 48 hours, it was exactly what we needed, until the third night. We got back late Sunday after wandering Riverbend's tiny boardwalk, gift shops selling tacky t-shirts, a bar that smelled like spilled beer, neon lights buzzing over empty sidewalks. Rachel showered while I flipped through cable channels. Steam filled the room, and over the water I heard her voice. "Hey, babe, I'm gonna grab some ice." "All right," I called back. I didn't think anything of it. She loved filling the motel bucket, keeping a glass of ice water by the bed. But 2 minutes later, the bathroom door swung open. Rachel stepped out in a towel, dripping hair clinging to her shoulders, eyes wide. She locked the door behind her, twisting it with urgency. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up. Her voice cracked. "There was a guy down there, by the ice machine." He followed me. My stomach tightened. "What do you mean followed you?" "Like, he wasn't getting ice. He just stood there. When I left, he walked in behind me. Didn't say a word. I panicked, so I took the stairs instead of the elevator. He followed me down 2 flights before I sprinted the rest of the way." Rachel wasn't the type to spook easily. She dealt with drunk patients, violent ones too. Seeing her rattled hit me hard. "What did he look like?" She swallowed. "Tall, 50s maybe, gray goatee, baseball cap, just dirty looking, like he hadn't showered in weeks." I stood. "Stay here. I'll check, wait." "No." But I was already at the door. The hallway was quiet, soda machine humming, the smell of carpet glue and mildew. Nobody in sight. I walked a few steps, peered around the corner. Nothing. When I came back, Rachel was sitting on the bed, arms tight around herself. "Maybe he went back to his room," I said carefully. "I swear to you, he was following me," she whispered. "I believe you. Maybe he was drunk or weird. But he's gone now." We locked the deadbolt. I shoved a chair against the door. Eventually, exhaustion pulled us into uneasy sleep. Morning sunlight made it seem silly. We grabbed breakfast at the diner, joked about it. Rachel tried to laugh. Maybe he's just socially awkward. Maybe staring is his love language. I forced a smile, but unease lingered. When we stepped onto Main Street, Rachel froze. She grabbed my arm. "That's him." Across the street, leaning against a lamppost, stood a wiry man in a faded baseball cap, gray goatee catching the light. Hands shoved in pockets, staring, not at us, but past us, like he wasn't really looking. "You sure?" I whispered. "Yes." We walked faster, turned corners. Hours later, near the marina, he appeared again, 20 feet back, blending into the crowd, his face blank. "This isn't coincidence," I muttered. "Why is he following us?" Rachel's voice trembled. I squeezed her hand. "We'll lose him." "Come on." We ducked through side streets, weaving into shops. Sometimes I saw him, sometimes I didn't. But that night, when we pushed through the motel lobby door, my stomach dropped. He was there, sitting in the corner chair, cap pulled low, head tilted just enough that I caught the pale flash of his eyes. Rachel gripped my hand so tight it hurt. We hurried into the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw him stand. Back in our room, Rachel peered through the peephole. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He's here. Right outside, just standing there." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I yanked the door open. He was 10 feet away, motionless. "Hey," I snapped. "What the hell is your problem?" The man's face twisted into fury. He didn't answer. "You've been following us all day. What do you want?" Silence. Then he reached into his pocket. A crackle lit the air, blue sparks snapping from a stun gun. Rachel screamed. "Back off!" I yelled, but he lunged. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. The crackle of electricity hissed inches from my chest. I bolted down the hallway, sprinting to the stairwell. "Help! Somebody help!" my voice echoed. The lobby clerk shot up from her chair as I barreled down the stairs. "What's wrong, sir?" "There's a guy upstairs. He tried to tase me." Her eyes widened. She grabbed the phone, dialing 911. Rachel came running down seconds later, shaking, barefoot. I pulled her close, chest heaving. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the motel's faded walls. Police stormed the halls. They checked cameras, interviewed us, searched the floors. But the man was gone. No one saw him leave. No license plates noted, just vanished like he'd never been there. Rachel and I packed our bags that night. We drove out of Riverbend before dawn, exhausted, heart still racing. I've stayed in hotels since, but never motels. Every flickering neon sign makes my skin crawl. Every ice machine hum makes me tense. Because sometimes cheap rooms come with a price, and sometimes someone else is already waiting for you there. Hello friends, I hope you are enjoying this story. If you are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe. Story 4, I never thought a summer job would leave me with scars I couldn't explain. Not the physical kind, but the sort that sneak into your dreams years later and leave you gasping awake. Back then, I was 22. My name's Daniel Harris, though everyone just called me Dan. I just finished my associate degree in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was stuck at that awkward crossroads where you're supposed to figure things out. College hadn't given me answers, just debt and a vague sense of being lost. My friends were moving away, transferring to universities, chasing careers. Me? I was back in my mom's small rental house, scrolling job boards late at night and trying to convince myself it wasn't permanent. That's when my cousin Rick told me about a job at Pine Hollow Lodge. It was one of those roadside motels off Highway 60 in southern Missouri. Brown brick, peeling paint, neon sign that flickered half the time. Rick had done shifts there before and said the work was easy. Sit behind the counter, check people in, keep the coffee fresh, and lock up at dawn. It sounded dull, but dull felt safe. And at that point, safe was all I wanted. Pine Hollow wasn't much to look at. 24 rooms stretched across 2 levels in a long strip, all doors facing the parking lot. The office doubled as the lobby, a cramped space with wood-paneled walls, a humming soda machine, and a desk shoved against the back wall. Behind it was a door that led to a tiny staff room with a microwave, a cot, and an ancient TV that only picked up 3 channels. The owner, a wiry guy named Mr. Callahan, was pushing 70 but still sharp. He wore polo shirts tucked into khakis and had a voice that carried across the room. "You'll like nights," he told me during my first shift. "Quiet as can be. You'll maybe get 1 or 2 late check-ins after midnight. Truckers mostly. Rest of the time, read a book, watch TV, whatever. Just be polite. And never," he paused, leaning forward, "never go into a guest room unless it's an emergency. Liability, you understand?" I nodded. At the time, I didn't realize how important those words were. For the first couple of weeks, it was exactly as advertised. I'd clock in at 11 p.m., take over from the evening clerk, a friendly older lady named Janet, and sit at the desk with my coffee. Most nights were empty. Sometimes a trucker rolled in around 1 a.m., paying cash and asking for a ground floor room. Sometimes a family, road-weary and cranky, would stumble in after a long drive. I got used to the sounds, the hum of the vending machine, the creak of the office chair, the buzz of the neon sign outside the window. Even the cicadas, their endless droning in the summer heat, it all blended into background noise. By the third week, I started to think maybe the job was too easy, almost boring. I'd sit there scrolling my phone, sipping lukewarm coffee, telling myself it was temporary. That's how the night started. The night I can't stop replaying. It was late July, muggy and thick. I'd been on shift since 11, and by 1:30 a.m., the lodge was dead quiet. I was half watching some late-night infomercial when I heard the office door creak open. A man walked in. He was maybe mid-30s, average height, plain-looking. Short brown hair, clean-shaven gray t-shirt tucked into faded jeans. He carried no bag, no suitcase, just walked up to the desk like he'd been here before. "Hey," he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "The air conditioner in my room's not working?" I sat up, trying to look professional. "Sorry to hear that. Which room are you in?" "Room 12. He said it instantly. I pulled up the records. Room 12 had been checked in earlier that evening. Paid cash. The name on the sheet, Mark Evans. "What's it doing?" I asked. "Not turning on at all? Or just not cooling enough?" He scratched the back of his neck, eyes flicking toward the floor. "It just doesn't feel right. Thought maybe you could take a look." Normally, I'd have told him maintenance would handle it in the morning, but something in the way he asked, soft, almost apologetic, made me hesitate. He wasn't angry, just expectant. "All right," I said finally. "Let me grab the master key." We stepped out into the night air. It was hot and sticky, the cicadas louder than ever. The parking lot was empty except for 2 trucks and a sedan. As we walked toward room 12, I tried to make small talk. "Just passing through?" He nodded without looking at me. "Yeah. Where you headed?" He kept his eyes on the pavement. "Nowhere special." That should have been my first red flag. Most people traveling at 2 a.m. have a destination. He said it like it didn't matter. We reached the door. He slid his key card and the light blinked green. He pushed it open but didn't step inside. He just gestured for me to go first. The air hit me immediately, cold, humming steady from the AC under the window. The machine worked fine, too fine. But what stopped me wasn't the AC. It was the room itself. It was spotless, too spotless. No luggage, no shoes, no jacket tossed on the chair. The bedspread was smooth, untouched. I said slowly, walking toward the unit. I pressed a button, and it clicked louder, blowing even colder air. "Seems to be working." Behind me, the door clicked shut. I turned. The man was standing with his back against it, hands at his sides, watching me, not blinking. "You're not leaving yet," he said softly. The words hit me like ice water. "Excuse me?" I forced a laugh. "Look, the AC's fine. If it acts up again, I'll make a note for maintenance in the morning." He shook his head. I said, "You're not leaving." My chest tightened. Instinct screamed at me that something was wrong. The way he stood there, blocking the only exit. His calm voice, almost rehearsed. I tried to keep my own voice steady. "Sir, I need to get back to the desk. Other guests might need something. What if I don't let you?" His tone never rose. It was almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. My pulse spiked. My palms went sweaty. I backed up a step toward the humming AC, slipping my phone out of my pocket. "Look," I said carefully, "I'm just doing my job. You called me here, I showed you the AC works. That's it." He tilted his head, studying me like I was some sort of experiment. "People don't understand. They never stay. You look like you'd stay." "What are you talking about?" My voice cracked. That's when I hit 911. I didn't even wait for the screen. I just pressed and held until it dialed. The operator's voice came through the speaker. 911, what's your emergency?" The man's eyes widened. His jaw twitched. Then without another word, he turned, yanked the door open, and bolted into the night. I stumbled out after him, heart slamming in my chest. The parking lot was empty. No footsteps, no car starting, nothing. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, room 12 was deserted. No belongings, no ID. The name he'd checked in with, Mark Evans, was fake. The driver's license he used was a forgery. It was like he'd never been there at all. The deputies told me I'd done the right thing by calling. They walked the property, checked the woods beyond the lot, but found nothing. For the rest of the shift, I sat behind the desk, shaking, staring at the office door every time it creaked. I quit Pine Hollow Lodge a week later. Couldn't do it. Every time I walked into that lobby, I felt eyes on me. It's been almost 6 years since that night. I've moved on. Different job, different city. But sometimes when I drive past a lonely motel on the side of the highway, I catch myself staring at the doors, wondering if he's standing behind one of them, waiting. The worst part? He didn't look like a monster. He looked like anyone. Someone you'd pass in a grocery store. Someone who might ask you to hold the door. That's what keeps me up at night. Not knowing what he wanted. Not knowing why he chose me. Just knowing that for one long minute in room 12, I believed I wasn't leaving. And maybe if I hadn't pressed that call, I wouldn't have. Story 5. I never thought much about roadside motels until that night. The kind of night that burned itself into my memory like a scar. Back then, I was 26, restless, and still trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. Life in Dallas had felt heavy. Same job, same apartment, same bars on the weekends. When my friend Marcus suggested we take a cross-country road trip, I jumped at the idea. No plans, no deadlines, just 2 friends, a beat-up Honda Civic, and the open road. For almost 2 weeks, that's what we did. We zigzagged across states, ate more gas station hot dogs than I'd care to admit, and crashed in cheap motels whenever exhaustion forced us off the highway. It wasn't glamorous, but it was freedom. By the time we started heading back toward Texas, though, the adventure had worn thin. My back ached from the endless hours of driving. My stomach protested against processed junk food, and even Marcus, usually the loud one, had grown quieter. That particular night, we were somewhere deep in Arkansas, hours from anywhere familiar. I had been driving for nearly 13 hours straight, my eyes gritty, my brain foggy. Marcus was slouched in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone. "Man, I can't keep my eyes open much longer," I muttered, rubbing at them with one hand. Marcus glanced over. "Pull off at the next town. I'll find us a place." I sighed. "Promise me you're not about to pull another cheap special. Last time you did that, we ended up in that dump in Missouri with the busted heater." He smirked. "Relax, this one's better. Clean, cheap, and it's only like $40. I gave him a side eye. "Better be. If it sucks, you're never picking again." 20 minutes later, we rolled into a town so small it barely deserved the name. Pine Hollow, a couple of flickering streetlights, a boarded-up diner, and a gas station with weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement. The Civic's headlights cut across empty intersections, like we were the only people alive. "This feels wrong," I muttered. "It's just old," Marcus said. "You're paranoid." At the far end of the town, a neon sign glowed faintly through the dark. Pine Hollow Motel. Only half the letters worked, so it read PINEHLLMOEL, buzzing faintly like a dying fly. The motel itself was a long, low row of single-story rooms, their paint faded to a sickly yellow. Out of maybe 30 doors, only 3 had cars parked outside. On one side was an abandoned car wash, its metal frame rusted and hollow. On the other, a patch of overgrown grass leading into black woods. "This looks like a set from a horror movie," I whispered. Marcus grinned. "Perfect. Let's go." We parked in the cracked lot. I checked my phone. No service. Great. Inside the office, the air reeked of old cigarettes and something sour. Behind the counter sat a heavy-set man in his 60s with greasy hair plastered against his scalp. He barely looked up from a static-filled TV when Marcus slid over $40. The man handed us a key, not a card, but an actual brass key on a cracked plastic tag that read, Room 12. He didn't smile. He didn't say, "Enjoy your stay," just stared until we left. Room 12 was everything I expected. 2 twin beds with mismatched bedspreads, a sputtering window, a C unit, and a TV older than me. The carpet smelled faintly of mildew, and the lamp flickered when I turned it on. "Cozy," Marcus joked, dropping his bag on the bed closest to the window. I glared at him. "If I get bed bugs, you're paying for extermination." But Marcus was already out cold, snoring within minutes. I sat on my bed, wired despite my exhaustion. My stomach growled, dry from gas station chips, and I realized I was out of water. Against my better judgment, I decided to look for a vending machine. The night air outside was thick and still, heavy with the scent of damp earth. The only light came from a dim vending machine humming near the office. I slid in a crumpled dollar, pressed the button for water, and nothing. The machine swallowed my money and gave me nothing back. "Perfect," I muttered, smacking the side of the machine. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching over gravel. A figure emerged from the darkness beyond the car wash. A man, tall, gaunt, with long, stringy hair that hung in greasy ropes around his face. His clothes were filthy, caked with stains I couldn't place. But it was his eyes that froze me. They were wide, unblinking, too bright in the dim light, like a predator sizing me up. He stopped just a few feet away. I forced a shaky smile. Hey. You good, man?" No answer, just staring. I turned, heart thudding, and started back toward our room. His footsteps followed. Slow at first, then faster. By the time I reached our door, he was running. My hands shook as I jammed the key into the lock, missing twice before it finally turned. I shoved the door open and slammed it shut behind me just as the handle rattled violently. "Marcus!" I yelled. "Wake up!" He groaned, rolled over. "What the hell, man?" Someone outside began pounding, fist against wood. Boom, boom, boom. The whole door rattled in its frame. The man's voice screamed something incoherent, slurred, guttural words I couldn't understand. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, backing up, grabbing the lamp from the nightstand like it was a weapon. The pounding went on forever. 5 minutes. 10. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. Marcus sat up finally, bleary-eyed. Who is that?" Before I could answer, the pounding stopped. Silence. Then footsteps, retreating into the night. We didn't sleep. Not really. Every sound outside made me flinch. By dawn, we stumbled out, bags in hand, ready to get the hell out of Pine Hollow. But when I turned to lock the door, I froze. Scratched into the wood, ragged letters gouged deep, were the words, "Not your room." I swear my blood ran cold. Marcus stared, face pale. Neither of us said a word. We just got in the car and drove until Pine Hollow was nothing but a blur in the rear view. That was the last time I ever stayed in a roadside motel. Story 6, I never thought I'd spend part of my teenage years living in a motel. At 15, my world had already been shaken more than I knew how to process. It was the summer of 2014, and everything seemed to collapse at once. My dad, Mark, had been laid off from his warehouse supervisor job in Ohio after nearly 20 years. He got lucky enough to find a new job offer in Missouri, but it meant we had to move fast. The problem was our house in Dayton sold quicker than expected. The buyers wanted to close immediately, and the rental home we had lined up near St. Louis wasn't available for another month. So there we were. My parents, my little sister Hannah, and me crammed into a budget, extended stay motel off Highway 61 in a suburb called O'Fallon. It was one of those faded boxy places with a glowing red sign that flickered every night. Sunset Lodge was its name, though there wasn't much sunset or lodge about it. Our room had 2 queen beds, a kitchenette smaller than our old bathroom, and a bathroom fan that whined like it was in pain. The carpet smelled like bleach mixed with stale smoke, and the walls were thin enough to hear people coughing next door. But it was what we could afford. Weekly rates, cash up front, no questions asked. At first, I thought it would feel like a vacation. Cable TV, vending machines, and a pool out back that always looked a little too green. But after the first week, the shine wore off. The strange thing was realizing that some people weren't just passing through. They lived there, whole families. Kids lined up for the school bus at the front entrance every morning. There was a single mom, Angela, 2 doors down, who had been at the Sunset Lodge for nearly 5 years. A grizzled man named Ray in room 117 swore he'd been there since the early 2000s. The motel wasn't just a stopover. It was a halfway world, suspended between temporary and permanent. Mom, Karen, made friends quickly because that's who she was. She'd chat with anyone in the laundry room or by the ice machine. I was quieter, but I noticed everything. The way people avoided certain hallways. The way the night clerk, a thin guy named Dennis with hollow eyes, sometimes locked the lobby doors before midnight and kept the lights low. Despite the oddities, I never felt unsafe. Not really, until that night. It was a Wednesday in late July, just before 11 p.m. Dad was on a night shift at his new job, and Hannah had already fallen asleep curled up with her stuffed rabbit. Mom and I were half watching an old sitcom rerun on the tiny TV. I remember her laughing softly, brushing her hair back when the sound started. At first it was background noise, doors opening, muffled voices, the usual Motel soundtrack. But then it grew louder, shouting, heavy footsteps pounding the hallway. A woman's cry, high, sharp, panicked. Mom sat up, remote frozen in her hand. "You hear that?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said, muting the TV. The shouts echoed, bouncing down the corridor outside our door. Then came 3 thunderous knocks. Bang! 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 "Police! Open up!" My heart jumped into my throat. Mom and I froze, staring at each other. "Don't open it yet," she hissed. Every door had a peephole, so I pressed my face against ours. My stomach dropped. A uniformed officer stood right there in the hallway, hand on his holster. Shadows shifted behind him. Other cops, moving quickly, tense. I unlatched the chain just enough to crack the door. Yes?" I managed. The officer leaned close, voice clipped. "Ma'am, sir, we need you to evacuate immediately. Grab essentials and move fast. Situation in progress." "What's happening?" Mom asked, voice shaking. "Can't give details. Please hurry." His tone left no room for questions. The door shut. Mom spun around. "Get dressed." Now we scrambled. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, shoved my feet into sneakers without socks. Mom yanked sweatpants over her pajamas and woke Hannah gently. "Sweetheart, we need to go, okay? Just hold Mommy's hand." We grabbed purses, phones, and Hannah's school backpack. No time for anything else. When we opened the door, chaos swallowed us. Neighbors poured out of rooms in clusters, half-dressed, clutching bags, dragging sleepy kids. The hallway reeked of sweat and fear. "Move it, folks, let's go!" Another officer barked, gesturing us toward the stairwell. Outside, the parking lot was alive with flashing red and blue lights. At least a dozen squad cars. Doors flung open, radios buzzing. Officers clustered near entrances, some cradling rifles. A news van idled across the street, antenna raised like a question mark. "What the hell is going on?" a man muttered behind us, arms crossed tight. "I heard it's a bomb," someone whispered. No, hostage situation," another voice insisted. Rumors spread like wildfire, but no answers came. Mom tried to flag down a cop. "Sir, please, what's happening?" "Ma'am, stay back." For your safety, he didn't even stop walking. That was when the real fear hit me, not knowing what we were running from. They herded us across the street, clustering near another hotel's entrance. People huddled in small groups, whispering, hugging themselves against the humid night. Some jumped into cars and sped off. Others stood frozen, staring back at the glowing rectangle of the Sunset Lodge. Hours crawled by. First 1, then 2, then 4. News crews set up cameras. Tactical units in heavy gear filed inside. Every so often, shadows flitted past the windows and the crowd tensed. By hour 5, my stomach growled loud enough for a neighbor to notice. "You hungry, kid?" Angela, the single mom from down the hall, asked. "Yeah," I admitted. "Come on, McDonald's is around the corner." "I'll drive you." Mom hesitated but finally nodded. "Okay, straight there and back." The Golden Arches never looked so comforting. I inhaled fries while Angela talked casually. Like this wasn't the first time she'd seen chaos here. "Had a meth bust last summer," she said. "Cops swarmed the place for hours. You kind of get used to it. I wasn't sure I wanted to." By the 7th hour, Dad showed up straight from work, worry etched on his face. "You guys okay?" "We're fine," Mom said, though her voice shook. "We just don't know what's going on." We weren't allowed back inside. Couldn't grab clothes, food, even Hannah's blanket. Some people slept in cars, others on the sidewalk. We called my cousin Rachel around 4 a.m. "Can you come get us?" "Please?" Mom's voice cracked. Rachel showed up in her dented Corolla, hugging us tight. She took us to her apartment and even stopped at Walmart for toothbrushes, pajamas, and snacks. That night, lying on her couch with Hannah snoring beside me, my mind replayed the motel parking lot, the rifles, the flashing lights, the whispers. The next morning, the news finally told us. A young couple in their 20s, staying in room 212, had outstanding warrants: armed robbery, drug possession, resisting arrest. When officers came to serve the warrants, they barricaded themselves inside, threatened to hurt themselves if police forced entry. So the standoff dragged on for 12 hours until finally, around 10 a.m., they surrendered. No shots fired, no hostages, just two desperate people delaying the inevitable. Everyone breathed relief, but relief didn't erase the memory. Even after we moved into our rental home, I never looked at motels the same way. Every glowing sign along the highway made me think of that night. Cops shouting, kids crying, the uncertainty that clung like smoke. It taught me something no ghost story ever could. Fear isn't always about the supernatural. Sometimes it's about real people, desperate, reckless, dangerous, living just a few doors down. And sometimes you don't get answers until it's over. Story 7. I never thought a simple maintenance issue would end up pulling me into the most terrifying night of my life. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 32, and until last fall, I was living in a small apartment complex on the west side of Indianapolis. It wasn't much to look at, but it was cheap and close to my job at a regional shipping warehouse. Money had always been tight, so I wasn't picky. My building was the kind of place with peeling paint, flickering hallway lights, and neighbors you only saw when someone burned popcorn at 2 a.m. Still, it was home, or at least it was, until the upstairs pipes burst one October morning. I'd been getting ready for work, coffee half poured, shoes half tied, when I noticed water dripping from the ceiling. Within an hour, the drip became a downpour, plaster crumbling, brownish water gushing across my kitchen floor. Maintenance showed up late, muttering curses as they dragged in a shop vac. But the damage was too much. Management posted notices that same day. Tenants would need to vacate for at least 2 weeks while repairs were made. For people like me, single, no family nearby, no savings for hotels. That left only one option. The city had partnered with a handful of motels around the county to temporarily house displaced tenants. I didn't like the sound of it, but it was either that or crashing on a coworker's couch. So the following Friday evening, I found myself driving 20 miles out of town toward a place called Cedar Pines Lodge. The name made it sound like a cozy retreat. In reality, it was a 2-story roadside motel just off East 70, tucked between a gas station and a shuttered diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly, several letters burned out so that it read, Cedar PSL DG. The parking lot was cracked, littered with cigarette butts, and smelled faintly of gasoline. I parked near the office, grabbed my duffel bag and laptop case, and stepped inside. The lobby was small but tidy. Fake plants, a rack of faded tourist brochures, a humming soda machine. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 20s, blonde hair tied in a messy bun, sweatshirt peeking out beneath her work vest. Her name tag read Amber. "Evening," she said, tapping at the old desktop computer. "Checking in?" "Yeah, City arranged it," I said. "Mercer. Daniel Mercer." She squinted at the screen, nodding. "Got you here. Room 214, second floor, far end. Wi-Fi passwords on the sleeve." She slid the key card across the counter. "Thanks," I muttered, shifting the strap of my bag. That's when the door creaked open behind me. I glanced back and saw a man step inside. He was about my age, maybe a little younger. Pale skin, stubble along his jaw, black hoodie drawn up, even though the evening was mild. What caught me off guard wasn't his appearance. It was the way he moved. Slow, deliberate, like every step was measured. He didn't look around, didn't acknowledge Amber. He just walked straight over and sat down right next to me on the wide sofa against the wall. There were plenty of empty chairs, but he chose right next to me. I tried to laugh it off, shifting slightly away. You good, man?" He turned his head slowly, locking eyes with me. His stare was unblinking, pupils wide in the dim lobby light. Then his lips curled into the faintest smile. "Just your eyes," he whispered. My chest tightened. "What?" He didn't answer, just stared. Amber's voice broke the silence. Here you go, Mr. Mercer. She held out my key card. I stood quickly, snatched it, and mumbled thanks. As I walked toward the hallway, I noticed the hoodie guy stand too. He didn't go to the desk, didn't ask for a room. He just trailed a few steps behind me, quiet as a shadow. The corridor smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. My room, 214, was at the far end. I swiped the card, the lock clicked green, and I pushed the door open. But before I could shut it, I glanced back. He was standing 8 feet away, perfectly still, perfectly silent, his expression empty, like he wasn't even breathing. I slammed the door and threw the bolt. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was just another guest. Weird, sure, but harmless. Still, his words echoed in my head. Just your eyes. I tried distracting myself, turned on the TV for background noise, unpacked my laptop, scrolled on my phone. Hours passed. Around 9, I stepped out to grab a soda from the vending machine near the stairwell. The hall was empty, but as I walked back, I heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, pacing mine. When I stopped, they stopped. Heart pounding, I slid my card, rushed inside and locked the door. Pressed my ear against it. Silence. Get a grip, Mercer, I muttered, forcing a laugh. You're just tired. By midnight, I had dozed off. That's when I heard it. A faint metallic scrape. The sound of something working into the lock. I sat up, pulse racing. The noise came again. Tiny clicks, like someone trying different keys. Barefoot, I crept to the door. Hey, I called, my voice cracking. It's late. Knock it off. The sound stopped. Silence. Then a voice, low and calm. But I just want to say goodnight. Every nerve in my body froze. I stumbled back, grabbed the motel phone, and dialed the front desk. Amber answered, her voice groggy. There's a guy outside my room, I hissed. He's trying to get in. Room 214. You need to send someone now. Okay, sir. Stay calm. We'll send security up. Don't open your door. I hung up, clutching the receiver. Through the door, his voice came again. Why would you turn away your best friend? I don't know you, I shouted, forcing my voice to sound firm. Leave me alone. I've got a gun in here, silence. Then rapid footsteps retreating down the hall. Moments later, I heard deeper voices. Male, authoritative. Sir, you can't be up here. You need to leave. Peeking through the peephole, I saw 2 staff confronting the hoodie man at the stairwell. He stood there, shoulders hunched, muttering. Then suddenly he bolted, sprinting down the stairs, vanishing into the night. I barely slept. Every creak felt like footsteps, every hum of the air conditioner like a whisper. At dawn, I packed my things in a rush. At the desk, Amber looked exhausted. We called the sheriff after he ran off, she said. He wasn't a guest. Probably just wandered in off the highway. So he just picked me? She hesitated. Sometimes people like that fixate. I'm real sorry, sir. I nodded, but my chest was tight. As I carried my bag to the car, I scanned every corner of the lot, half expecting him to be watching. To this day, I don't know what he really wanted. Robbery, violence, something worse. All I know is that when I close my eyes, I still hear his voice whispering through that door. But I just want to say goodnight. Story 8. I never thought a job like this would stick. When I first took the night clerk position at the Pine Rest Motel in Des Moines, Iowa, I figured it'd last 3, maybe 4 months. Just enough time to scrape together some rent and keep my head above water. That was almost 4 years ago. And somehow I'm still here, sitting behind a cracked laminate desk every night from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., watching the parking lot buzz with drunks, truckers, and tired families. It's not the kind of job you brag about at Thanksgiving. My cousins are off in Chicago and Denver, working tech jobs, building families. Me? I hand out key cards at a budget motel off the interstate, but I've learned to make peace with it. Nights are quiet, pay's lousy, sure, but I don't have a boss breathing down my neck at 3 a.m. It's just me, the hum of the soda machine, and the glow of the security monitors. Still, there's a loneliness that comes with this life. At 3 in the morning, the world feels hollowed out, like I'm the last person awake in an entire city. Some nights I like that emptiness. Other nights it feels like something is watching me from the dark corners of the lot. Most of the guests don't faze me anymore. I've checked in truckers who smell like diesel and sweat, teenagers with fake IDs trying to get a room for the night, women running from bad boyfriends, men who swear they're on some important business trip but can't look you in the eye. You see all of humanity on a shift like this. But there are some nights that don't fade into the blur. Nights where one guest changes everything: the air, the temperature, the way your body reacts before your brain can catch up. And one of those nights happened this past February. It was a Thursday, slow night. A freezing wind had rolled in, and the lot was nearly empty. Just two semis idling at the far edge and a rusted-out minivan parked by the office. I was in the back room, stirring powdered creamer into bad coffee, when I noticed movement on the lobby camera. At first, I thought it was just a drunk guest wandering back from the gas station next door, but the figure didn't walk right. He drifted across the asphalt like someone trying to remember how their legs worked. Too steady to be falling over, but too strange to be normal. His head stayed tilted down, but even through the grainy black and white feed, I saw his eyes. Wide, unblinking, locked dead on the lobby doors like he knew exactly where I'd be. My chest tightened. I told myself not to overreact, straightened my shirt, and stepped out to the counter. The glass doors slid open with their usual hiss, and that man stepped inside. The air shifted immediately, thinner, heavier, like a storm had settled right there in the lobby. "Evening, sir," I said, trying to keep my tone level. "Looking for a room tonight?" He froze about 5 feet from the counter. His skin looked pale under the fluorescent lights, his hair thin and gray, his shoulders hunched. But it was his stare that unnerved me. He didn't blink, didn't even twitch. He just locked onto me like a hawk sizing up prey. Then in a low, flat voice, he asked, "Why are you so nervous?" Why is everybody so nervous all the time? I forced a professional smile, the same one I use on drunks and angry customers. "No one's nervous, sir." "Do you need a room?" Instead of answering, his eyes darted to my hands on the keyboard, then back to my face. After an uncomfortable pause, he pulled a battered wallet from his pocket. My pulse jumped. I half expected a knife or a gun, but he slid an ID and a credit card across the counter. The name read, Harold M. Danner, local address. The card was scratched, edges chewed. He stood there smiling faintly as I typed his information. Then suddenly, he pointed toward a side table stacked with tourist brochures. "Who designed that?" he asked sharply. I didn't turn. My gut screamed it was a distraction, an attempt to get me to expose my back. My hands froze above the keyboard. "Sir," I said quietly, "I need you to leave." That's when his smile widened. His teeth were yellow, uneven. He opened his wallet again, flashing a small badge tucked inside. He tilted it toward me, letting the light catch it. "See this? Everything's fine. Nobody's hurting you. You're okay." My throat went dry. The badge looked real, but I'd seen flea market junk that looked convincing too. "You need to go," I repeated louder this time. He didn't move. That's when I noticed the spreading dark patch down his jeans. The acrid stench hit seconds later. He had pissed himself right there in the lobby, and he didn't seem to care. I stepped back toward the office door, heart hammering. He leaned forward slightly, unblinking. "Why are you scared?" "Who's making you scared?" I slipped behind the office door and locked it, fumbling to switch the monitors back on. He just stood at the desk, staring at the counter. A minute passed. Then he muttered something I couldn't hear, turned, and shuffled out. There was a young guy in the lobby, college-age, backpack by his feet, waiting for a ride. His face was pale as he looked through the glass. His lips mouthed, "What the hell?" I grabbed the phone and called the police. While I was on the line with dispatch, Harold didn't leave. He lingered in the lot, drifting between cars like he couldn't remember which was his. Finally, he climbed into a beat-up gray sedan and pulled out, only to circle the motel slowly. Then he looped into the Days Inn across the street, crawling around their lot. The college kid tapped at my office door. I cracked it open. "Man, that dude's coming back with a gun," he whispered. "I'm not waiting outside anymore." "Go around back," I told him. "Cops will be here any minute." He nodded and disappeared. Not 5 minutes later, Red and blue lights flashed across the lot. Two cruisers rolled in. I gave them a description, voice shaking. A call came over their radio. They had just pulled Harold over across the street. DUI. When they searched his car, they found the badge. Real. He'd once been the police chief of a rural Iowa county, retired, longtime alcoholic. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Because when I replayed the footage later, one thing was clear. Harold hadn't wandered in by chance. The way he walked straight to the desk, the way he tried to bait me into turning my back, it felt rehearsed, like he'd done it before. And his words still echo in my head sometimes, when the lobby's dead quiet, the highway hum the only sound. Why are you so nervous? Why is everybody so nervous all the time? I don't know how many clerks before me have heard those words, and I don't want to know how many never made it home to tell the story. Thank you so much for your love in watching the video, and I truly appreciate you for liking and subscribing.